We're still waiting for Mr. Kevin Gersh. Is he in the hall? Shall we get started then? Right. So we have 45 minutes. So we had a very interesting morning session, and the panel is about promoting inclusivity. So there were lots of lectures on promoting inclusivity. So first of all, before taking the questions from the audience, I mean that's a major thrust. So I'll just kind of briefly summarize and one or two questions from my side first, and then we can move on with Minal Kavishan. So you mentioned about pets and inclusiveness in autism. Lots of interesting animal-assisted interventions and farm-based AI, which is more predominant in the West, as you said. So I mean, my only, there are lots of positives over here, but I was wondering that, and you mentioned in one of the sites that animals are unconditional and non-judgmental. But in the real world, people are not unconditional and non-judgmental. So whatever gains that these kids achieve through all the interventions that that you sort of projected in the video as well. So what really happens in the real world scenario when once they move on from the therapeutics, from their therapeutic space to, okay, these are extra questions. Once they move on from their therapeutic space to the community, so what is your experience about how do they deal with these kind of sort of judgmental and the big bad world?
I mean,
basically.
it's a strange thing to say that animals are more human than humans.
Yeah.
And a lot of people find more acceptance within animals than in humans. And the terms non-judgmental and unconditional may be very big, and with animals it may not necessarily be exactly, like, yes, they are non-judgmental. They will not judge you based on what you're wearing or how you look or whether you can, grasp, hold, walk, not walk, whatever it is. But they do make it easier for a lot of people with autism to be able to connect with them. But as therapists, now this is one part of it. A lot of pet owners will also experience that. But what takes it further is the therapist involved in working with the animals. So the animals will provide that condition, a very fair condition for the child to be able, or for the person to be able to connect with the animal. But to be able to generalize that learning, it is the therapist's role. Like, I think that's true with any other therapy also. The child may do very well in the presence of a therapist. Yes, but unless the child learns to generalize, the therapist's role is not fulfilled. So we also involve parents, the key here is to create that bond between the child and the therapy animal, since the child is not living with the animal. For those who have a pet at home, or who have a service animal, or who have a companion trained therapy animal, the scenario is a little different because it's ongoing, it's continuous. The interaction and the effects are going to be, long term. But for those where our therapy dogs go as visiting dogs, or those who come to the center to avail the therapy, we try and involve the parents in it by giving them certain insights into how the child has bonded with the dog and what all is the child ready to do for the animal. And then that can be taken back home. So most of the time we give photos of the therapy dogs, or we ask the children to write letters, or to practice the same skill somewhere else, or probably get the child, say, to the child's school, get the dog to the child's school, where the child can probably say a few lines about the dog, or have a group interaction where the child can then introduce the dog. So then these kind of settings make it easier for the child to then make the learnings more generalized. So the medium here is what helps the child to cross that boundary from just the therapeutic setting to a much more social setting.
And in that way, they can establish a communication with their peers in school as well, isn't
Absolutely,
it? Like using the dog or the pet as one of the...
Now here I would like to point out the model that you have developed where, it is not just a singular therapy that will work, but everything together. We try to make this a part of the school system and not just an individualized therapy. Like I don't run my own clinic. I always try to partner with an institute or a school because that's where you will also be able to work with the physiotherapist, the speech therapist, the parent itself, and the special educator and all that, the confluence. And that's where the generalized learning will also happen. So if I see a child responding, a non-verbal child, with autism, responding well to the dog, and there have been cases where many times the first words ever of a child was the name of the dog. But I'm not a speech therapist.
Yep.
What I can get from the child or what the dog brings in is that level of motivation and the willingness to participate in therapy. But I would definitely need the speech therapist to be able to take the child from that point to then start developing his speech further. So a lot of child are labeled non-communicative, and the teachers are like, ye to nahi baat karega. This child will has never spoken. But then they are surprised when they see the child actually calling out the dog. So it's not that the child cannot talk, but the child is not motivated enough to talk.
Yeah.
And the dog is able to bring that out.
Yes.
But then it has to be taken further from that point by that particular appropriate therapist. It can be a speech or a physio or the special educator or the parents.
Yeah, that becomes extremely important in autism, isn't it? Otherwise, they will again withdraw into a shell. And
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah.
Speaking of speech, I'd like to share an experience that we've had in one of our schools. In Seattle, we have a school right next to a zoo. And every day the children go to the zoo. And we had a child in our speech therapy, and even with our BCBA, she had between 10 and 20 words in the school. We took her next door to the zoo. We put her in front of the lion cage. She had 100 words. Lion therapy, great. And it's because of the motivation. She loves tigers, she loves lions. She was motivated to speak about it. Colors, stripes, names.
Yeah. So you just have to be creative. And so, Dr. Risa James, thank you very much for the excellent work you're doing in terms of Asha Kiran. And you did mention in your, you cater to different needs and, the 4 buzzwords about diversity, inclusion, holistic development, and community living. I was just wondering that in terms of, although it's not good to label but you did mention in a slide that you take care of all kinds of, the school takes care of all kinds of kids. But what are the major specific strengths as well as challenges in terms of the autistic spectrum that you have experienced over the years and how you have dealt with it? In terms of working in the holistic environment.
See, the spectrum, again, it's a spectrum. And so, right from one end to another, we had many different kinds of kids. And it was not clear. We have right from kindergarten till class 12. And we have a different transitional plans. So we have children, like now we don't say Asperger's, but very high functioning autism children, and even the low functioning. So we have all children at different levels. So once we start, I think one of the panelists said right from the beginning, there are 2 priorities, self-help and communication. So the kids can commit, but we do get nowadays is very good, 4+, sometimes even 3+. So the first question when the phone call comes is a very silly question, but the first question we ask, is your child potty trained? That's the first question we ask, and in most of the time it comes, yes. So when we call, then I have my own checklist, and just now we heard task analysis. So I had 1, 2, 3, 4. And then they said, okay, I can do that, but this. So it's been broken down. So those are the challenges. Autism is such a frightening word right now. I think we need to take out that fear that parents learn and then they just don't do anything. So I asked them, even just I'm giving you one example of potty training, and I said, have you done it? Or you did it and it didn't work? There are different ways to train. And 99.9% I get the answer, no, we didn't train. So that's one of the challenges. I have real, not big challenge with children. I have concern with the parents. And then, of course, behaviors. To me, again, I look at behavior as the child's communication. The child is there. I need to understand what the child is communicating. It's my problem. I don't look at it as the child's problem. Just to give you another example, we had a child, and as I said, I asked, what does your child like? And a very strange answer, he likes collecting sticks. Simple sticks. Oh, what am I going to do? And if you don't, his pockets are not full of sticks. He's a crazy lad. I can't tell you what he can do. So my first job was, as soon as he enters the gate, give him a bag, go collect sticks. Okay? He collects the sticks, and we have taught him everything with sticks. You can teach 1, 2, 3, you can teach shapes, you can teach place value. I can go on and on. So I think if when we use the word challenges, I learn from that. That's my opportunity to understand the children or adults with autism rather than saying this is the problem. Hope I answer that.
Yeah. I think flexibility is the key word, isn't
Yes,
it? Like,
yes.
don't be rigid onto
Yes.
specific sort of paradigms,
Yes.
and be more flexible about it. But I was also wondering about you mentioned about behavior.
And
but
the one more thing I tell you, like again, is taking these children or inclusion is I can't decide. See, why we put it together, I cannot decide sitting in the office, oh, this child will fit in or this not. So we have a 3 days observation, and I think the child has to live with children. I'm not going in the class and playing with them and doing it. So I'm no one to decide. And I train my kids. Okay, maybe child is violent and he's hitting. So I said there is a child coming like this, and I know why the child, we have already done our research, why the child hits or pinches. So I teach all my kids, okay, this child when gets very excited, pinches. So what can you do? Can you just give a high five? The moment you give a high five and say, I love you. So it's teaching the kids more than even training the teachers, because the child will be with the children. So I do with many violent children. With this, I train the children.
Yeah, that's for the behavior. I was
Yes.
also wondering about the learning part, because it's a school.
Yes.
And when do you rely on professional assessments in terms of how much the child would be able to learn, or when to switch from the academic teaching mode to the more vocational mode?
Yes.
So how do you take that decision, or how do you kind of come to that?
Okay, so we have prerequisites for every level. So like for kindergarten, we have almost 5 sections, right from toddlers till before they go to class 1. So now from kindergarten, you are transferring the child to primary. So kindergarten is quite informal situation. Primary from class 1 is a real formal classroom. The child does not have that. So we have created, we call it a 0 class. So it's between kindergarten and primary. So that 0 class, the children are given 50-50, and the behaviors, our focus is not academics there. Our focus is whatever the child has learned, can he do in a restricted environment so that he's ready for a formal classroom. So every level, then from primary to middle school, again we have a transitional class and a checklist. But again, different levels are done because we are dealing with the government private exams.
Yeah.
If we are preparing the children, we are preparing for that. So there are different ways. Now you can have a written, we have a different kinds of question papers. Same thing, it can be written, it can be oral, it can be with the typing, so many ways. And with this, we have fought with the government. And now even in 10th and 12th, what all the help and the provisions these children have, which were not there before. Now I have taken tests for 10th standard, 12th standard on laptops, and I have children with autism who are talking. I can put them in a separate room. Okay, you talk, you type, but I have done those exams also. So those flexibility, as he said, I can't teach the way the child has to learn, and so we go that way. So that is also done, and government is accepting now that.
Okay,
It's
that's
doing
great.
that.
That's great. That's great. Well, coming to you, sir. Yeah, it was very very thought-provoking, entertaining, and everything your lecture was. So putting the child first, education. I was just wondering about. I've worked in UK for 8 years, and there's this whole as you mentioned that having a case manager is extremely important. How do you determine who would be the case manager, number one, and the acceptability of the other, it's, after all, it's a multidisciplinary team working, so the acceptability of the other, the other people who are involved in the child's care with regards to who the case manager is?
I don't believe that the case manager has to have a certain skill set. They need one thing and one thing only, is the love for the child. And when the case manager comes forward and the occupational therapist sees how much they love the child, they're going to fall in line. Because anyone working with these children, we all have the same, you don't do it for the money. And you do it for what the child gives to you as a person and what we can give to the child. And we have found that our one-to-one aide making minimum wage can be a wonderful case manager, along with a lawyer. And it's not their training, it's the it factor. Do they have the ability, the compassion, and the love to do what's right for the child? And when you put that first, I think everyone else falls in line, as long as it's clear that they're there for the child.
So who determines this, who will be the case manager?
Well, in our schools, we do. Ultimately, we hire them, we interview them, just like who's going to be the teacher, who's going to be the one-on-one. But when the case manager, we also bring the parent involved. So we say, we believe this person will represent your child properly. We introduce the parent, and we have to get the parents' buy-in. But our parents trust us.
Because it's like a cricket team, isn't it? You mentioned about Jasprit Bumrah, and you showed us his slide. Yeah. So it's like a team, but here we are in a team, in a football team or in a cricket team. The major emphasis is on winning the match, but here is to provide the right kind of person-centered plan for the kid. And as in any team, there has to be an acceptance to the case manager, and as would be in a team for the acceptance of the captain. And we have seen in real life that can be a real problem. So do you face any problem with regards to that?
Of course, lots of times. It's about trust. Sometimes the parents get in the way, and they have to teach the parent to saying, okay, has it been working so far? No, maybe we should try a different way. And, I'm great with other people's children. With my own children, I'm not so great. So sometimes you have to instill the trust, and it's a relationship, because there's times when the parents have to step away, and the case manager has to step forward, and sometimes the case manager has to take a back seat, and the parent steps forward. So it's a delicate dance. But in anything with these children, there's always challenges, and you always get a bad case manager, or you get difficult parents, and that's part of our life.
Mm-hmm. Okay, thank you. So, Rima, thank you very much for your presentation. You began your talk with mentioning about different models, and then you went on to steps of assessment, which you would normally use. And I was just wondering that, like, the models have a strict, I wouldn't say it is very rigid, but they have a strict kind of parameters with regards to, be it ABA or be it TEACH. And at the same time, you mentioned about skill sets and having a person-centered approach. So how do you marry the two together?
Well, as you know, anytime we pick up an assessment tool, we have an objective. We don't just pick up an assessment tool just to pick up an assessment tool. So when we are accepting a student into our practice or into our school, we pick up that assessment tool to find out an outcome,
Yeah.
where they're at, and where we're going to start. So depending on, first of all, if the parent that's coming, or if they're coming into the ABA practice, then we know that the assessment tool we're going to use is the ABLES, because that's what's going to give me the structure to start from. But I never rely only on the ABLES, because even with the ABLES, it gives you where you need to start, but it doesn't give you a full picture of where the child's at. So that's at least with me, this is where I start. But if a child has gone through several therapies, and there's a lot of cases where the parents have tried A, B, C, and D, and now they're coming to you because they've tried several things and they're frustrated, this is where I say, okay, let me take battery A from here and battery B from here, and I do my own little package, and then I put it all together and come with a different set of regulation. I'm not bounded like a psychiatrist with a certain rigid, but at the end of the day, all I'm trying to do is come up with a picture that will give me the most positive outcome, to come up with a curriculum that I can supervise and my therapists can follow, so the parents can see the best results, and we can be the most successful with the students, right? So
Yeah.
this is how I do it.
Yeah, it works with every professional. With us also,
Yeah.
we have a framework,
Yeah.
but we don't have to follow that rigidly. I mean,
Yeah.
we can always use our intuition, and that's where, that's where changes come. I
Yeah.
mean, that's where DSM-3 moves on to DSM-4 and DSM-5. So
Yeah.
it's not.
But the most important thing that I always do now in my practice is I always take the time to do that last bit, where I sit down and find out more about the personality of that child, and what he likes, what he doesn't like, what makes him have a bad day, what are his goals, what makes him tick.
Yeah.
Because this is him as a human before I go through those assessments.
Can I add this?
Yes, of course.
So there are formal assessments, and after you get all that, and sometimes with the formal, we just get the numbers. And we are not looking for the numbers. The children are not assessed by the numbers. So I'll just add up to this. Because the curriculum we follow is based on the skills and the concepts. There are the things which children can do. There are some mental things the children can understand, or just the simple way. Yes, the child can do 2 plus 2. What is plus? Child has understood. The child can do mentally, the child can do with calculator, the child can do with different things. So we have those skills listed out at each level and the concepts listed out. And we do tick mark, and to know what the child can do this, which we don't get from the scores. And there I think I just want to add here, because most of the parents, especially with autism or with any other disabilities, they are looking for academics. That's the most important thing. So, and I had a meeting with chairman of NIOS and the regional director in Bangalore. So they were telling the children are not able to write the formal question papers. So I requested him, sir, can you change the mode of evaluation? And he looked at me, said, yeah, if the child is not able to do, why don't you do this way? So he gave me a little freedom. He said, ma'am, you develop. And I said, if you go in the West, there is a list of things the children progress. So why can't we make, the kids are they're good in doing things. So why can't you do skill-based assessment, that class 1, the children do these skills, class 2, they do, at least they are progressing. Otherwise, we keep treating them, a 14, 15, 16-year-old child, like a baby, teaching them ABC, which has no meaning for a 14-year-old child. So NIOS are pretty open for that. I hope most of you know what is NIOS, otherwise you go on the website. They're open. If we can develop a curriculum which is skill-based, and they are maybe ready to recognize. It's in a very, very infancy stage, but I'm going to go and again meet with the directors and some of the professionals in Bangalore. They're very, very eager, most of them, those who work with autism. Yeah.
So we are now taking questions from the audience, which have been submitted. So I'll start
So
with
the
you.
question that was asked of me, that having a case manager, how does a case manager know enough about OT, PT, speech, counseling to coordinate and to be effective? And they don't need to know as much as a speech pathologist, but they need to know when to defer to the speech pathologist, get that data, get the progress notes, and make sure that from the speech pathologist, the teacher gets the notes, and the OT gets the speech notes, and the psychologist gets the teacher's notes. It's coordination. No one person will ever have the expertise in all these areas. And as far as testing, we're all human. And there are days when I come to my school and I'm better than others. And I've read hundreds, probably thousands of neuropsychological reports. And sometimes I'll meet the child, I'm reading the report, and I think they got the wrong name on it. Because I don't recognize, this child in this report does not reflect this child. Now, it could be he tested on a bad day, or it could be the neuropsych had a bad day. And I think it's incumbent upon us as professionals to know that we're all human, we all make mistakes, and as long as we look at that child with open eyes, it's not the paper, it's not the test, it's the child. And that child is where the rubber meets the road. That's where we have to start with assessment, not with a piece of paper.
Yeah, Rima, please.
I have a question from Sujita. She says, do you have an amalgamated tool to be incorporated? And if you do, please share it. I do have my tools that I use in my practice, and I've highlighted them here. The problem with me sharing a tool, because it has not been, I can share what I have, obviously I can. The problem is, things like when you use an assessment tool that has been put through tests and it has been standardized, it's something completely different. You know, we all use things like the PPVT, and we all use things like the ABLES and different assessment tools, and these have been standardized, and they have their guidelines and they have their manuals, and so those we all use, and if you're licensed to use them, not everybody can use them. If you're licensed to use them, then you can use them. The tools that I've developed for my practice are my tools, and they are not licensed. They're licensed for me. I use them, and the parents are aware of what I'm using for my curriculum, what works for my children, and I'm happy because they give me the results that I want. Of course, I have not gone through all the studies and the research behind it and standardizing them, because I'm one. But if you would like to get a copy, I would be very happy to share it.
I have a question here which says, could you tell us a little more about the structure or plan of your therapy sessions? Now, every session is individualized. There are no two sessions that are same. Also, since we follow the non-directional approach of therapy, even though we have a plan, when we are in a session, the goals will remain the same, but the plan may keep on changing. Because here we are dealing with a child with autism and a dog, and both have free will, which cannot be really put in a structure. So I'll just give you a brief layout of what we follow. What happens in a session keeps on changing. So at no point of time is the dog or the animal directly put in front of the child, or the child directly exposed to the animal. There are steps to that. I get a lot of other questions like, what if my child is scared? Or what if my child has never been exposed to animals or interacted with a dog ever. So we take it step by step by first just assessing the child without the dog and trying to understand what his regular behavior is. We talk to the referring therapist to understand more about what are the goals that we need to work on for the particular child, if it is behavior or if it is motivational or if it is communication based. So those goals are assessed. And then the first session, when the dog or the animal is introduced to the child and the animal interact at the distance. Now, like if I were to get a dog here, there would be some over here who would directly reach out to the dog, directly go and hug the dog or start petting the dog. But others would take time and find their comfort level and then probably approach the dog. So the similar time span is given to every child that we work with. They can observe the dog, on the first few sessions if they're not comfortable getting too close to him. But there are certain children who would just directly come and hug the dog. So we know the start point from where to start. And then every session is structured with a particular goal in mind. But there is a lot of freedom within the session, and there's a lot of scope for spontaneity within the session. Because this is one space where the child gets the opportunity for spontaneous expression. And in children with autism, that is something that needs a lot of working on. In most other therapies, most other therapies are directive. So a speech therapist will tell the child to say something in a certain way, and that's what the child has to do. Or a physiotherapist or a special educator will tell the child what to do. Here, the child has to do reverse learning because nothing is told to the child. The child has to find that bond with the dog. The dog is responding firsthand, and that interaction is extremely spontaneous. And then my role as the therapist is to facilitate that interaction and be spontaneous. So if a child is zoning out, and just wants to look out of the window and not interact or not respond to what the therapist is saying, I will get the dog to come as close as possible to the child. Okay, the child might just touch or feel the fur of the dog or the tail, wagging against his leg, and automatically the attention is, brought back to the dog. Or if the child just wants to run about in the room, the child is free to do that. Instead of asking the child to sit in a place and pet a dog, that's not how animal therapy works. The dog will be made to follow the child. And the child soon realizes that, oh, the dog is following me. He is, kind of imitating. Very similar to parallel play that happens in play therapy. And the child starts responding to the dog. He will stop. He will look at the dog. And that's the cue for the therapist to take it further. So here the animal is the facilitator. He will get the best response of the child, which makes it easier for the therapist to then take it a step further. So, there's no planned structure, there are no steps, though we do follow a certain pattern, but there's a lot of scope for spontaneity, spontaneous expression, smiling, hugging. You can't plan these things, right? We just provide enough activities to be able to get that out of the child.
You have a benchmark and you work according to, be flexible around it.
Benchmark would also depend from child to child. So if a child comes in with no social emotional expression, we give him enough time and scope to bond with the dog. Once that bond is formed, the dog becomes the child's friend, and then you can see the child smiling when the dog gets the ball or runs toward the ball, or would spontaneously want to hug or say bye. These are all social communication instances that otherwise need to be taught. But here they come spontaneously because the child wants to do that for the dog.
I think we won't have enough time to cover all the questions. They'll all be available for lunch. Moving on to your question, please.
Here the question is how to recognize the skills that can be developed from the start as a future livelihood or career. What careers have been seen for visual learners who can read patterns or puzzles well and are good in maths? See, there is no standard test, as if I know that right from the beginning you can do and find out that the child will fit in. But again, it's the key is for observing, and not just the teacher, maybe the parents, whoever works with the child. Sometimes even children discover each other's gifts. So, and even in my school, we get lots of sometimes volunteers and visitors. I said, even if you see something very little strange thing with these children or something good, please do report. Don't just walk in and see the children. They are not the pieces of just to look at. So they do watch them working. And for maths and this, till now, I think this question is just for the children with autism. Am I right? Yes? Yes? So we had a child like this, so as we have learned, they have a programming mind and good in maths and puzzles. This child in, I don't know here, but Bangalore, we have SAP labs. They do take children with autism and lots of things, but they had till 12th. But this year, they have raised their bar to degree level. But this child is going for programming, who was good in all these things. He did 12th with us. Was supposed to go straight away for they give 2 years training. But this year, the child has to finish his degree. He's moved to Mumbai from Bangalore to finish his degree, and then he will go. And till now, I think these are the programming or the computer hardwares or software, all these three, what we have discovered with children.
Okay, I'll take one or two questions addressed to me actually. So is medicine or does medicine help to reduce or stop constant irrelevant talks? A boy with autism age 25 plus. It's again like, you know, we have to identify what we are planning to treat. Here the problem is constant irrelevant talk. So we have to look at the environmental situation first. We have to see that what is making, is it boredom? Is it lack of activities? Is it understimulating environment? These things need to be looked into first. And the other thing is that it is also important, you mentioned about a man actually with autism age 25 plus. So, you know, like we still don't have enough adult services over here. So, you know, like maybe when he was a kid, he was having a lot of services around him. And now once he has reached adulthood, those services are not there. So he's just sitting at home idle or not doing anything. I'm just presuming, I'm not sure about it. But those things are to be, and as I mentioned, medication helps in reducing aggression, in reducing behaviors, only when we look at the environment and do the environmental manipulations, or the person, this is the 25-year-old man, but for any other circumstances, for the person, if the person is not engaging in therapy, or if the person is not attending to vocational pursuits, and it is becoming extremely difficult, so we will again have to work as a team. We have to work in conjunction with the therapists, we have to work in conjunctions with the other professionals involved in this person's care, and then take a decision about using medication. So medication is used for a specific purpose. Medication is not used just because the person is exhibiting and externalizing behavior. So that would be my answer. Okay, now.
There's a question here that says, do you think any sort of picture exchange communication systems decreases the motivation level of a child to try to speak? No, no. Picture exchange is a tool. It's a tool that actually it has been proven that it promotes communication. And if a child has the ability to speak, it does not hinder their speech. Communication is vital and it's important. So we want a child to communicate in any way, shape, or form. If pictures is a way that will get them to communicate and learn that reciprocation is a way to get them what they need and what they want. There are several phases that after they start learning. Phase 1, which is just requesting, then it moves to different levels until they can form a sentence, and then they can have a conversation. With that, we have noticed, I can tell you my own experience, after phase 3 of picture exchange, my son at age 10 started uttering his first words. And now he has about 50 or 60 words in his repertoire. He's still minimally verbal, but the minute I pull up his picture exchange, or now it's an app on his iPad, he tries really hard to find the words to communicate with me, because he really hates the process of trying to find the pack that he needs to communicate. So I love it because it's a deterrent. He really does not like to do the hard work. He's what I call a typical man. Sorry for the men in the room. He is lazy and he doesn't want to do the hard work. So he finds the words. So no, I find that it is a good way to start communication.
Okay, 3 quick responses from the 3 of us. I have a question, you have a question, and she has a question. So yeah.
Okay. There's a question which says, it's beautiful to see what animals do for us, yes. However, I wonder if it is too strenuous for the pets and the whole training thing and continuous exposure to different children. Now, this is a very, very important question. Just like with humans, you know, our work, no matter what field we are in, a lawyer will face different kind of stress, a surgeon will have different kind of work stress, as psychologists and as therapy providers, service providers, we undergo a lot of stress, but we can speak about it. We can do something about it. With animals, the handlers and the facilitators have to be trained in understanding how they express that stress. Animals do undergo stress. Now, the difference here is in the selection process, or the key here is in the selection process. Therapy animals are not merely friendly and social animals, okay? The willingness of the animal to participate in therapy is extremely important. So I would not have a random dog or a pet who, you know, who may be friendly at home, but when put in a room full of strange people, like if I were to get a dog here, the dog would have to be really confident. So that is the kind of personality we look for. The temperament, the dog might be friendly at home, but is he friendly in a room full of strangers? Is he, you know, comfortable walking on a strange platform like this? Or, you know, an enclosed, because these are not, say, our therapy dogs go to hospitals and, you know, schools, even airports. You know, we have a program at Mumbai International Airport. So these are not natural environments for dogs. Okay, but there are certain dogs who have that kind of personality, that kind of confidence, that kind of even temperament, that they will perform the same way or they will behave the same way in all situations. But along with that, they are also prepared to work with the kind of people that they will be working with. So for children with, for the dogs that work with children with autism, the dog undergoes a lot of sensory training as well, in terms of the rough touch, the, you know, tight hug, or the tail being lifted, but we also have to take care of the boundaries that it is not hurting the dog. And the recognition of stress for handlers, that the handler has to be aware when the dog is stressing out and give appropriate breaks.
I think your question should be the last one, actually. You can end with that. So I'll just quickly answer my question. I won't get into the details of this question. It is about a 16-year-old child with a diagnosis of autism and mood disorder, and he is on medications. So he's on 2 mood stabilizers and risperidone. The question, why I'm taking this question is because I want to give a message. Presently, the child is on a certain dose of risperidone, and the question is, we adjust, increase the dose by 1 milligram from time to time, depending on his behavior, irritability, etc. Is it better to keep him on higher dose or keep adjusting the dose? My only answer to this is that you have to visit a professional to take that decision. You cannot take it on your own day in and day out. So it is a professional decision, and it will depend on a lot of factors that we have already discussed. So please visit a professional and don't take a decision on your own.
And if you do change medication, please tell the school. One thing, just in our equine program, the horses let us know when they want to work and when they don't want to work, and who they want to work with. We've had children, the horse will not come out of the stall if that child's in front of them, and he'll walk out of the stall for another child. So the horses and the animals, if you listen, they will talk to you. The question I had is, what is the collaboration we are going to have with the India Autism Center? And my answer is, that is yet to be seen, but I can tell you, in 30 years, I've never met another man that has the same vision and dreams that I saw today. When I walked out there and I saw those plans, and I showed him my plans, they were almost identical. And I've never met another chief autism officer. And I believe together, he has resources, and the Indian Autism Center has resources that I don't have, like the collaboration of all these wonderful speakers. And I mean, just look around this room, the power in this room is incredible, and I don't have access to that. And I have a facility that's already built and up and running that we could put children in tomorrow. So I think it's incumbent upon us to work together, and him and I are now like best friends. So we don't know what the future holds, but I can promise you, if we do anything, it'll change lives.
Sure, thank you very much. And that's the whole purpose of this meetings and everything else. Thank you very much. Thank you, panelists, esteemed panelists, and thank you for your lectures as well. It was very illuminating.
I will just tell one more. Robotics is another new field is coming for these children who have asked